Thank you for watching this interview. My name is KathleenSmith, and I'm chairperson of the Mentors, Entrepreneurs, and Leaders Group. Today, I will be interviewing two doctors who, like myself, are members of that group. At the end of the interview, I will give you a link for more information about that. After a long career, I returned to university and obtained a PhD in psychology in 2010. Then I worked at universities in Europe and in my home city, Toronto, Canada. Now I'm retired and engaged in volunteer work, and I have a lot of time to work on my core passion, which is redeveloping my skills as a classical pianist. I'm joined today by Dr. KetanKulkarni of Halifax, Canada, and Dr. FrancisYoo of New York, USA. Ketan is a physician, clinician researcher, and entrepreneur with many hobbies and interests. He is a certified life coach. Francis is an integrative Eastern-Western physician, guided meditation practitioner, and personal development consultant with several hobbies. Ketan and Francis have collaborated to write a book, The Legendary Quest, which has recently been published and is available on Amazon. Welcome, Dr. KetanKulkarni and Dr. FrancisYoo.
Hello.
Thank you. Hello. Thank you, Kathleen. That's a very kind introduction. I think you already set the bar very high, so we're going to try to aspire to meet it.
Did you want to say a couple of words, Francis?
Oh no, this is an amazing conversation we'll have, and seeing that book pop up was also very, you did it in a very legendary way, so thank you.
I'm curious to know, Ketan and Francis, how you met each other.
Yeah, that's a really interesting question. Do you want to answer, Francis, or do you want me to go first?
I can answer that question.
Yeah, go ahead.
So let's see, it's been a little bit over more than 2 years ago. We met on an online physician-specific personal development entrepreneurial group where we just immediately saw each other's introductions and saw each other's presences, and we saw that we had a lot in common. And I don't even remember what the discussion was about, but there was this instantaneous connection and chemistry regarding our interests, our past endeavors, and our future interests that we held in common.
So you really clicked right away.
Yeah, for sure. I remember that. And then that, then morphed into online conversations and, more discussions. And then eventually, I believe it was end of 2019, we said, okay, we've got something here. Let's start doing some formal work. And then that transformed into a book, which is the first book that we have here.
Who are you writing this book for, The Legendary Quest?
Maybe I'll start with that, Francis. Is that okay? So I think The Legendary Quest is, in the ideal world, it's for everybody. But we first wanted to start putting this together for professionals, for professionals who've spent a lot of time, have acquired degrees, or they work in a specific area. They've faced challenges in their life. They have lived experience, they've gone through burnout, or they just want to get better, So it's for any professional, any person with any skill set that wants to get better and live a fulfilling and authentically successful life. So I think, the qualifier for professionals seeking excellence is maybe superfluous, right? It's for every human being that is walking the planet Earth, So it's really for everybody collectively, us as human beings in the quest of our inner excellence, But, we thought, we are sort of both professionals. So we thought, okay, let's try to reach out to our professional colleagues from all walks of life and see how this resonates. What do you think, Francis?
I would simply add that in a way we are also writing to ourselves and for ourselves the book, and we are reaching out to people who resonate with this quest that we want to go on, and others who are in a similar boat, we're in a similar boat, we'll be in a similar boat, so we can be on this boat together and help each other on this adventure.
So why do people become doctors?
Many. I think Francis should start this one.
Yeah. I would say there's a combination of internal and external drives and motivations. There is a long historical as well as still retained cultural idea that the physician profession or career is highly regarded, whether it's financially, respect, socially, and it is if you became a physician, became a doctor, you are a success. It is one of the professions that age old, in many cultures and many situations, it is just known as that particular profession.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's also the internal expectation of, I like this form of study, this line of acquisition into sciences, into the arts, into service, and it all coalesces into this path that happens. And we do go into the book about how sometimes when those expectations internally and externally can not quite match up, which is not that uncommon. So I'll have Ketan continue off from there.
Yeah, no, I think you said it beautifully. I mean, on top of that, I would like to say that it's also one of those highly skilled, regarded professions where you have the ability to touch, other humans and really contribute to their wellness and well-being and improve their health. And, we know from science, we know from data that the most lasting form of happiness comes from adding value, from contribution, from adding meaning, whether it is to your life or other life. When we sort of start looking beyond our personal self and personal ego, that's when you truly start transcending, as in adding value to the world around you, whether it's, your community, nation, world at large, or whatever it is. That's what the motivation is. And that's a very important part of being physician. I think any professional actually is truly adding value to others, right? I mean, you're just not working to have a longer CV. So I think that's sort of part of it. And I agree with Francis that it's such a complicated decision. And this probably applies equally to lawyers, accountants, psychologists, or you name it, right? Any highly skilled professional, I think the same concepts apply. They're not becoming a pilot for one reason, that they love flying planes. That's probably part of it. But people have to, at least in 21st century, look at, how the profession is looked at, what they internally feel, what they externally feel, their family situation, circumstances, finances, their ability to train for that profession, how do they see themselves 10, 20, 50 years later? So it's such a complex decision. And I think that's part of the segue into the book, that, so often people do not become physicians, lawyers, accountants, or whatever else it is, because they truly understood or wanted to be one, that it's just often circumstantial, or that was the path of least resistance, or an easy choice, or, a cultural choice, or financial choice, or so on and so forth. And then, in the short term, it's all probably okay. But in the long term, they almost become, like lost souls, right? I mean, it's harder and harder for people to find their true selves as they go further. And it all becomes just, smudged, right? I mean, then they feel like, oh, wow, well, if only I had the chance, I would become this writer, or I would become this poet, or become this astronaut. So we wanted to present information that's, sort of available all over the planet in often complex and cryptic ways, but we wanted to try and bring it using a scientific lens, but also in a bite-sized manner. And that's what the Legendary Quest is all about. I think, it's about busting the myths that we have, and, identifying and understanding the way towards true inner excellence and consequently towards outer excellence. And that's why the book sort of goes in three parts. We try to sort of explain what we often get wrong, and then we take people on this quest for inner excellence and how to achieve it, and then understanding true authentic success and outer excellence. So that's a great question, I think, because that's exactly what we sort of thought about for months and months, and we embarked on this book idea.
What are the signs that a person is working too hard?
Yeah, that's a good one, I think. You want to start, Francis? You are the inner excellence guru.
So there's a general answer, and I will say there's a specific answer, because for each person has their lifestyle, experiences, practices, patterns, emotional patterns, thought patterns, habitual patterns that will flavor it in different ways. And a simple general answer would be there is a mismatch, a discomfort, there is a time or space or place where the different aspects of life aren't coalescing. They are being split asunder in a way that could be internal, external, where the emotions, values, beliefs, physical stature, posture, gastrointestinal issues, other physical health issues, or relationship with others. There is maybe breakdown is not the best word, but there is a lack of cohesiveness of everything going together, and that there is this continued part in which all these different parts are no longer or becoming increasingly less whole. And that could be expressed, as I said before, many different ways. It could be increased various negative emotions of shame, anger, fear. It could be continued thought beliefs that are distorted or eschewing what's really going on, or physical movement habits in which we are moving towards actions that are not conducive to our health. And another simple way to look at it is we're working too hard when our body is making us rest. If we're collapsing at the end of the day, or we're moving towards some other form of self relaxation, whether it is through eating or entertainment, in the end, the rest and the work matches up pretty well, and our body will let us know one way or the other. Maybe we'll just collapse, or maybe we'll sleep for 14 hours, or we may get sick and force us to rest. So that is a couple of angles I would give to that question.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think you said it beautifully, right? I mean, in addition, I think it's this ego dystonic feeling, right? I mean, you have this mismatch that, if you truly feel that you don't want to do something you're doing, or if you really are looking at something as a means to an end, okay, well, let me just work this 14-hour days for 3 months, and then I'm going to be sort of happy. So, these are classic mental traps, right? I mean, so that's one way of looking at it. And then I'm just going to scope back to look at the data, right? So after Second World War, when automation really started, the theory was, and we talk about that in the book, right? I mean, the theory was that life should be very simple, and we should be working less and less and let the machines do a lot of work, and the day should be maybe 4 to 6 hour work day. That's not what happened. I mean, people are actually now known to work way harder, so much so that in so many fields like, IT or investment banking, medical field, or, healthcare providers, and so many other fields, even lawyers. I know a lot of lawyer friends that start their day at 4 a.m. It's incredible that, people are working 50, 60, 80 hour weeks, and, they think that that's a means to an end, but often we see what Francis said, that, you end up in a midlife crisis, or you end up sick, or, you just get sick and tired and burnt out. And, this idea of working hard should probably not be confused with a culture of working hard where we just expect people to compromise everything else and just focus on that one work piece. That is absolutely necessary and can be a call of duty at times, right? I mean, if your firefighter is working the 24-hour shift, you want them to be at their best of, top shape to take care of the whatever that comes in their way. But they can't do that 24/7, 365. That's just not going to happen. So I think that's a slippery slope. I mean, this is such a beautiful question that the hard work culture maybe is confused with an idea of compromising that over everything else and thinking that maybe if you do that, that's the only way to excellence and that's the only way you're actually contributing your optimal. I mean, many of us might know that big companies like Google, they'll often give people half a day off. They want them to sort of go work under a tree or sit in a cafeteria and so on and so forth. I mean, from what I know, Gmail was an invention when somebody was sitting casually saying, oh, well, this works really good. And we know it's one of the best emailing systems. I mean, it works beautifully, right? So you do need that space, that, mental state, that ability to be connected with the universe or connected with each other to come up with those breakthrough ideas. So I think just driving ourselves hard, thinking that, we're compromising everything else for that work is likely going to be counterproductive in the long run.
You talk in your book about core values. Can you say more about that?
I'll give that to Ketan. That's one of his favorite things.
Yeah, I think I'll start it anyways. I think core values is such a key thing, right? I mean, if we really look at, as a person, when we start looking at our choices, preferences, habits, behavior, thoughts, ideas, if you work deep enough, you will start finding the pattern, right? I mean, and that's so important. Your core values are clearly the driver for most of your choices. So for example, one of my core values is excellence. So I'm looking for excellence in a painting to a clothing item or work or research or anything it is. So I mean, that's going to be a driving force for me no matter what I'm doing. So too often, people have never really had a chance, never had an opportunity to examine their core values, really understand it. I would say, that is such a soul-wrenching process, right? You really need to focus and go deep inward to understand who you truly are and examine your belief systems. And often it needs to be guided or helped by other people close to you or some sort of a mentor or coach that needs to help you walk through the process to truly know your core values. But that's, I think, priceless to understand, because that could explain sort of your core beliefs and your decisions, your choices, your preferences, prejudices. And if there is a mismatch between who you are and where you want to be, your core values could really be the guiding force that, let's say you're a journalist, but you truly wanted to be a writer and maybe you're not happy. You're just kind of thinking, and your core value was that creative writing as a form of excellence, then no matter how good you do in your journalism, you're going to keep gravitating towards writing, right? So, I mean, having that awareness, inner awareness of how, who you are and how your core values drive yourself is so key. I mean, I know Francis does a lot of work on personal development. I don't know if you want to comment from that aspect, Francis.
Yeah, I would add on or repeat what you said about the awareness part, that we have we tend to gravitate towards a certain way we do things, whether or not that's for our best health and best being. It's probably usually not the case. When we meet others or go through a significant life experience, something that shocks us, a shock point that takes us to a place where we can see ourselves and be aware of ourselves in a different way, in a deeper, more expansive way, that is where we can see that mismatch. And like we're saying, it is the having someone else, having someone that is within, someone you click, it could be someone you click with, or maybe someone you really don't get along with, but something that catalyzes this awareness of something needs attention inside of me. And if we start looking inwardly more and outwardly and see how that balance and relationship is, without that, if we don't do that, then the core values can be lost. Even if they're trying to show themselves to us, if we don't respond, then it become a, not, it won't really go anywhere.
Yeah.
A major theme of your book is the transition from living a life according to other people's expectations, whether you realized it or not, to living authentically according to your own real sense of what matters to you. This involves a journey of getting to know yourself that you've just been alluding to a bit. How would a person go about starting this journey? What can you actually do? You do talk about this in the book.
Yeah, that's a great question. I think Francis, I'm going to let you start this one, because I think it starts with looking deep inward first, and then outward. So
I would say, to continue off with my previous answer, there comes a time and place where our life, inner life and outer life, continues to present to us whether there are mismatches or opportunities to do something different. Maybe it is going to the same work situation, but not having the same amount of fulfillment or satisfaction at the job. Or it may be increase the distance from someone, a loved one or a friendship. Or it can simply be a physical change in habit, gaining weight, eating certain foods, watching too much TV. There's this increased number of signals and intensity of signals that come from the outside and inside. And if we pay attention to that, then that's where we can actually make changes.
mm-hmm.
Sometimes it comes as a large event, whether it is a huge health scare from ours or others, or it is a gigantic dissatisfaction with a living situation. Basically, to use the word I said before, the shock points will increase, and at some point it becomes unavoidable. Or if we continue to try to avoid it, it's to our detriment to our continuing personal development.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, to look at this, strictly scientifically, it's a journey that one undergoes from point A to point B, and that is going to involve some degree of, examining what's wrong, understanding what you need to fix, how you need to grow yourself, put in some consistent effort, and really embark on this journey of self-mastery, right? So in the book, we present this limited self model in which most human beings are spending a lot of their time, right? I mean, for good or for bad, a lot of people are in this constant state of discontent and anxiety and distress of some form, however slight or however severe. And we sort of walk through that process in the book to explain why that is the case. And then in the inner excellence piece, we were able to come up with this awareness model, as we call it, that really sort of underpins most of human existence. I mean, whether you look at it from the ancient wisdom perspective or modern psychology perspective, we've tried to sort of present all of that information together in a bite-sized fashion through that awareness model. And then that really starts. So then I think about 6 or 7 chapters of the book really walk a person in a step-by-step fashion on each aspect of that model, so that they eventually sort of end up driving their life by design, which is a very popular word right now. But, what does it really mean, right? I mean, it really probably means, how do you align yourselves optimally to who you are, and then really understand what your true goals are, and then how do you then go about achieving it? It's a process, right? It's a journey. It's not going to be just like that, right? It's not going to be like this creative visualization that you suddenly made, X amount of money or success or whatever it is. So you also want to have that journey as an enriching experience. So I think, like Francis said in the beginning, I think we wrote the book to ourselves and to others, because we felt that, having that stepwise scientific evidence-based path would be a powerful means to spread the message that, we all are capable of, not necessarily believing that, life happens to you, but, life follows you type of concept that, your life is sort of unfolding in the way that you are aligned or not aligned internally. So I think that's a powerful concept that's been probably in existence since time immemorial, but it's if you strictly look at it from the spiritual angle, it's more convoluted, right? And it's often personified, and people really sort of get confused about it. They think, well, that spiritual angle is for somebody who's long retired and now looking at sort of, how do I take it from there kind of thing. But I think if you look at it more broadly, it could be, a science of fulfillment or science of happiness that can be applied here and in the now. And that's why in the sort of last chapter of the book, we present with this happiness hypothesis based on evidence that exists, that, what is it that's truly going to make us happy, and then we try to present those ideas so that people, all of us fall in these mental traps, right? If I buy the next nice car, I'm going to be happy. Or if I buy the next vacation ticket to XYZ location, I'm going to be happy. But that's only going to lead to transient happiness. And you really need to understand the science of happiness, which is very simple, I think. It's not like it's this unreachable, complex ideal, So we really thought that looking at it from a critical scientific eye would be of lots of value to all professionals. And so, just to answer that question again, I would say that, that process from point A to point B is a nice journey that you could really sort of embark on and make it enriching, and that's probably the purpose of the book, that, just to catalyze and catapult people towards that journey of self-mastery.
One of the valuable, for me, one of the valuable features of your book is that you get very specific in places. So for instance, one specific technique of many that you've mentioned for learning who you are as a person involves doing mindfulness meditation.
Yeah.
And can you say a bit more about what that is?
Yeah, Francis loves to talk about the breath work, so I'm going to let him start first.
Yeah, so the way we use that term mindfulness is interesting because it does have a lot of Buddhist origin, is very Buddhist in origin, where the idea is to be attentive to what is going on, whether internally or externally, to be in a way full with one's mind versus being having a lot of things cluttering up the mind. So as opposed to having a lot of things occupy our attention and our mind and our thoughts, it is, I am the responsible agent. I am the person that is having this thought, as opposed to all these thoughts are having me and leading me. It's simply awareness, being able to pay attention in a as a responsible agent, with the intention of becoming more aware and not being led everywhere from our thoughts. So we lead our thoughts as opposed to being led by our thoughts. That is how I would describe it.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, there's a lot of evidence that, we are the consciousness that experiences our body, our mind, our thoughts, our emotions, subconsciousness, and so on and so forth. And it comes down to taking the ownership, I think, which is very easy said and hard done. It comes down to taking the ownership of our attention and intention, and whatever you focus on expands. So it's this idea of being able to distance ourselves from the ego, the mind, the thoughts and emotions and all the reactions that we have to different things that happen inside and outside of us, and really about resolving those restrictive thoughts and emotions that may be holding you back, and then trying to realign ourselves. There's so much work in this area that's been done, and it's so powerful that we all can draw from that, right? The idea of non-resistance and non-judgment to thoughts and emotions, and just allowing your urges and processing your limiting beliefs and reprogramming your subconsciousness. It's really in our learning experience, reading, writing, we thought that it's not like rara, it's not like pseudoscience. There's some sound scientific basis, and as more and more studies are being done now, using, whatever PET scans to fancy MRIs and electrophysiological studies, we are actually seeing, when they study monks and people with advanced meditation techniques, they do see even physical changes in the brain that exist. So it's definitely something that's drawn on very sort of deep science. And, I think the challenge with it is that it's not as easy as typical scientific papers that, your p-value is 0.03, so it's statistically significant. It's more experiential, right? It's more around really grounding and understanding and going deep inward. So it's not about showing to somebody else that you are having this stillness inside you, but it's experiencing that at the forefront of life. So I think I again would go back to the previous answer that I think it's a journey, right? I mean, it's not going to be one quick destination that comes and passes.
You refer to a scarcity mindset,
yeah,
and you contrast it with a growth mindset. Can you elaborate on that?
Yeah, I think that's one of our favorite topics too, that, most of us don't even realize. I think the purpose of that in the book is to really learn how to weather the storm, how to go about navigating life situations or events or circumstances or even thoughts and emotions when they're seemingly not going in the direction you would like them. And, so often, all of us are stuck in this restrictive mindset where we have limiting beliefs, where we have negative emotions. We are stuck in thought loops that are not helping us. We are stuck in behavioral and habit loops like overeating or over drinking or alcohol or TV or whatever else it is, or, just driving around or even shopping sprees, like a lot of people are doing those things to feel happy, to get outside of a certain situation or a life event that they don't like, So how do we look at that objectively and scientifically, and how do we walk through it? So, almost everybody on the planet wants to be rich and famous, yet most of the people will say that, well, the rich are bad and, the famous people are just not nice. I couldn't do that and this and that. So if you have those restrictive and negative beliefs about somebody who is successful, famous, rich, wealthy, or, how do you expect yourself to get into those shoes? I mean, it's as simple to show that contrast, right? I mean, it's very difficult to be somebody who you truly criticize. You're very unlikely to be that person. So I think this growth mindset, even competition, jealousy and all the negative emotions, we live in this world full of advertisement, comparison, and, feeling better when you buy the fancy fur coat or whatever it is. It's such a mental trap that we are in because of the matrix of media and technology and social media especially. It's really important for people to inculcate and develop that growth mindset so that we live expansive lives and lifestyles instead of having this scarcity mindset that you're just kind of after that one thing or one achievement, or just sort of solely achievement driven narrow sort of lifestyle choices. What are your thoughts, Francis, on that?
I would add that in the past few hundred years, that has just become the perspective that we have.
Mm-hmm.
We're the individual, separate from the tribe. We have, especially nowadays, it is, I got this grade, I got into here, and which is all very important, that we're different and differentiated from others. But if we exclusively focus on that, then we get to this restrictive, there's not enough perspective. But if we remember that long in the past, everything was more collective, tribal, shared, and there is a lesson if we learn from that, is we can be individual, differentiated, but also realize that there's so much opportunity and that we all integrated and there's so much room for growth, as opposed to continually separating ourselves so that I can be by myself, be whatever ways I want to be. We're in this together, and there's so much available for all of us. That's how I would say it.
You're careful not to suggest that life becomes a bed of roses when you're on your quest. What happens to the journey towards authenticity when life throws up serious problems?
I would say that's a sign that you're on the right track.
Mm-hmm.
That actually is good, because otherwise we are not being thrown into the realm of discomfort. we all grow doing things that we haven't ever done before, taking our first step, eating our first solid meal. These aren't things we just do right away without any discomfort. It is this sign that actually something is changing and a new growth is happening.
Yeah, I think that goes back to the growth mindset that, how do we navigate those challenging experiences, and how do we maintain that, growth mindset? How do we maintain gratitude? We go a lot into gratitude. We get into this habit of just assuming everything is granted, and how do we go through forgiveness and, contribution and meaning? I think those are several of the aspects that help us weather the storm, and how do we develop the trust in the unknown and, comfort with the discomfort, and, how do we know we are on the right path? And I think that's where the journey starts getting beautiful. I mean, we know, we for sure, like you said very rightly, we're not trying to say that it's going to be a bed of roses. It's most unlikely that it's going to be a bed of roses.
You mentioned visualization, and perhaps you can tell your listeners how to do a visualization, what would happen, and what's the purpose of it?
Yeah, I think visualization really comes from, many different walks of life, but primarily from sports science, right? I mean, if you look at how coaches train their athletes, it's really a mental game. How convincingly can you have that athlete truly believe that they're going to win that gold medal on that day at a certain time? So Olympic gold medals or high-level athletes are very well known to visualize that outcome that they desire like 100 million times. And, as they say, if you convince your mind that you're going to get it, it'll figure out a way, even if nothing seems to appear. And that's so true of entrepreneurship, right? I mean, if you look at the Dyson vacuum, that person truly believed it was going to happen, and then they failed 5,000 times and they persisted. Einstein shows an example of that as well. And then, Thomas Edison showed, how to sort of get the light bulb going despite failing hundreds of times. I mean, visualization is the real driving force that will keep people going despite the darkest of the hour, right? Or it'll help them endure their difficulties. So, visualization really, of course, I mean, you want to use it creatively and positively, towards positive energy instead of destructive energy. But if you truly believe that, you want to create this app or whatever it is, how convincingly can you really have your mind, body, energy, cells, everything in you and your surroundings believe that it's going to happen? And it's amazing that it's not really pseudoscience. I mean, like I was mentioning before, it's used quite often in many different walks of life. And, it's also used in breathwork. I mean, Francis also teaches around that. I mean, the mind and body don't know the difference between something that's truly happening and something that you imagine. So, for example, in the same moment, you could sort of almost have your body cry, or make it feel incredibly happy as if something amazing happened. And it just shows us that, we can induce those feelings, thoughts, emotions in ourselves and truly sort of induce those changes. So that's where the visualization techniques comes in. And in the book, we do describe sort of some of the science and these practical steps on how to use that and apply that to your lives.
I would add, coming from a musical instrument perspective, right? Once you practice enough, or even in between practicing a musical instrument, there is this building of synapses and connections that are connected with the actual action taking place. And like we just shared, that the body or the brain doesn't necessarily always, or I can argue, although I'm not a specialist in this area, that the brain doesn't know whether you're actually fingering the strings on a guitar a certain way, versus just do it as a visualization, imagining it taking place. It reinforces and continues to make those synapses that are there. So whether there's a specific skill or practice or behavior or end result we're looking for, strumming a guitar, playing a C chord, then doing it over and over, not just physically, but also when you wake up, in the shower, and imagining how it feels and how it looks like, and that will continue to reinforce what that is, and that could be expanded to so many different other skills, physical as well. And sports like we said, is a great example about kicking the ball, receiving the ball and over again, and coming up all these different situations, and what would I do in this situation, and with the continued practice, the brain just continues to reinforce those pathways.
Yeah, and it also works the other way around. Like, as Simon Sinek, one of my favorite writers and speakers says, you can't say, don't think about the mountain. Your brain is going to think about a mountain instantly, like you can't. And that's one of the powers of this, right? I mean, if we focus too often on negative outcomes or, things that are going to go wrong, they likely will, right? I mean, we know that. So it's also about that conscious shift in attention to really sort of make sure that you are focusing your attention on the desired outcomes. So, that's also the power of creative visualization, that, you want to really direct your attention to what you want, not what you don't want, Like they say, don't keep saving for the rainy day, because likely you're going to end up with a rainy day, save because you want to save for whatever XYZ reasons, right?
I was gonna say the exact same thing. If you're trying to hit a ball with a baseball bat, and visualize yourself missing all the time, your brain will reinforce the synapses and the experience of missing all the time.
You talk in your book about emotional intelligence and the fact that it can be trained, people can be trained to develop emotional intelligence. How do you know, you yourselves, how do you know when you're dealing with a person who you think has high emotional intelligence? What are the signs? What are the indicators?
I think that's a fantastic question. Again, I think I'm going to let Francis start, and then I'll come to my thoughts.
How do we know others and also our level of emotional intelligence, EQ, whichever you want to, however you want to spin it or take it? There are official definitions and measures and questionnaires and assessments we can use. I come from it more from a experiential, interactive perspective, and it comes down to, are we aware, again, being a responsible agent and responding to my own emotional state, someone else's emotional state, the atmosphere or the social ramifications of what's going on, what are the understandings, cultural understandings, what's going on, and then am I navigating all that with that understanding gained and responding in a conscious, aware way, as opposed to being shutting off or reacting simply from my own emotional position, or not trying to be aware of where someone else is coming from, whether it's based on their physiology, emotions, or what words they may be using, or the situation that we're in. And so it's simple observation, observing how others, how are they deciding, how are they responding, how are they acting, what is the behavior taking into account the surroundings, and observing ourselves and others. So that's how I would phrase it.
Yeah, I mean, again, taking the scientific perspective and digging deep down, we know for sure that EQ is a far better predictor of success than IQ. So I think it's time to really embrace EQ. And now they also have some more complex measures like the SQ or success quotient and so on and so forth. But the reason why is because EQ is all about interactions and knowing people and, really connecting with people. And we know that relationships are the most important, driver or predictor for happiness. So that's why we go deeper in the book as to the fact that, EQ is something we need to look at, we need to embrace, we need to test. But the good news is that EQ can be developed, right? So for example, whenever I've done EQ tests, you'll always find some blind spots and lacunae. And then you have to sort of work on those things. And the good news is they can be worked on, right? I mean, for example, one of the things I really had to work on was active listening. I would, if you're a Mensa member, you probably clock an IQ 140 and over or whatever else. And we often know that those people will be quick at making a decision. Okay, well, this is how it's going to work. All good. Let's do this. But, that's probably not how the entrepreneurial journey is going to be like, in the situation of trouble or, having to make a decision. You might have that weak or seemingly weak voice that has the right answer. But if you don't quite, equip yourself with listening to that and integrating that into your decision making, maybe you're going to miss the boat, and that's one of the ways to explain that, we drill down deep into methods of developing the EQ, and also in the leadership chapter in the book that, what are the myths around leadership and how do we really embrace ourselves as, self leaders in our personal and professional lives. And we really do need to inculcate those habits around EQ and engaging with others and communicating with others in its truest sense. So I think it's an act of co-creation, right? I mean, you're really if you look at any high performing team, they never say high performing person, right? They always say a high performing team, because you need those non-linear collaborations and cohesive nature to create those outstanding results, right? I mean, maybe, the old times one person did it, but now given the complexity of work-life situations, you're almost certainly going to need alternative perspectives. And, even now, I think I sometimes miss it that, I have that blind spot. I didn't think about it, ignored somebody else's advice. And it doesn't matter where in the hierarchical system you fit. I mean, your entry-level student could have a brilliant, groundbreaking idea. And I mean, you have to be able to sort of take that for what it's worth, I think. And that's why I think EQ is such one of my favorite topics, that, it's something we can develop. It's something we need to develop, if you truly want to be successful.
You have a whole chapter in your book on the subject of leadership, and you define leadership, and you talk about its different aspects and so on. Why is that? Why does that have an important place in your book?
I think this is another fascinating question. I think you've done so much work before the interview. I think it shows, I think leadership is often same as success, misunderstood. I think leadership is probably the most wrongly thrown around word, because most of us have this media-based idea that, leader is somebody who makes, thrashing decisions, and, they're making these, these are these high performance, ruthless people, corporate leadership that's just, finishing the opposition and really doesn't listen to anybody, has this gruff, dark theater like voice, and just this one-sided decision maker that's extremely powerful. But that's really not what leadership is about. I think, we think that leadership has a very important role in our self-development journey, and in the perspective we use in our book is that we are our own leader, right? I mean, anybody if you interact with other human beings, which most of us do, and if you work in a job, in a profession, it's very likely that you influence other people, have to direct other people, or take directions. And, in those situations, which is most of us, we have to understand what leadership is truly about. So we go about in the book busting so many myths around leadership, saying that, well, that's not what leadership is about. We come at leadership from the perspective of taking ownership, developing the right skill set, coming at it from a scientific approach that, how do we connect and communicate with people? How do we actively listen? How do we break the hierarchy? How do we ensure that all team members are successful? For example, leadership is not about your longer CV or success. It's about making sure every other member of the team is performing at their optimum, and as a consequence, you are performing at your optimum level, and that's why I think it takes a special person to get into some of those big leadership positions, because, they have grown beyond their selfish ego, and they say, oh, okay, what does the team need, and that's why so many of these high performing companies, I mean, if you look at the business literature, they will often not hire the smartest person in the room, right? They will hire the person that's the best fit with their team, because they want to make sure that high performance culture exists and persists, and the delivery of results happens. I mean, and too often people look at it harshly and say, oh, well, businesses are tied to dollars, and that's why they do that. But I don't think that's true. If you look at the companies that are successful in long term, that's not the approach they take, right? They take an approach of adding value, adding qualities, customer service, really making sure they're delivering to people and providing things that people want and need, right? I mean, look at how seamlessly Zoom works. I mean, they've not been in business for 3 months. They've been around since 2011, and they've grown to become this ginormous company now that's almost seems like second nature to us. So I think that's quality, right? I mean, it works seamlessly. It's connecting billions of people. It's easy. It transcends time. You can do so many things with it. I mean, are they going to be successful? For sure, those are some of the qualities. And again, that may be from the business perspective, but even from a micro leadership perspective, we also wanted to highlight the fact that even at your home, or dealing with your kids, or dealing with your relationships and friends, how can you bring value? How can you present as yourself, and how can you look at your own fallacies with a smile and saying, okay, well, these are my strengths and these are your strengths. Let's see how this works in unison. So that's the perspective we drill down in the book to say that again, same as EQ. Leadership is something that is acquired as a skill set. I think there's maybe a rare natural born great leader like Nelson Mandela or whoever, but for most of us it will be an acquired skill set, just like we learn to walk and run and do a marathon or whatever. I think you can become a great leader without necessarily having or being attached to the titles or to the accolades, and really just performing high within yourself. So that's kind of the perspective we try to present in the book.
So this book, I'll hold it up again. This book, The Legendary Quest, it's written for professionals, especially when you see it says so right there. In my opinion, and in fact, in the introduction, our two authors were saying this as well. It can be used by people from all walks of life and all adult ages. The advice and the writing style are accessible to many different readers. There's a lot of practical information. At some points, it's like a easy to read manual. And the authors have found a way to really connect with the reader. So you're not just reading through saying, yeah. You're actually, oh, this applies to me, and this is how I can make it apply to me. So the connection is there. So I'd like to take a moment to thank Ketan and Francis, to thank each of you for taking this time to talk with me. I have really enjoyed it, and perhaps each of you would like to say one or two sentences in parting.
Well, first of all, I just want to thank you, and it's a heartfelt thank you for, taking the time to do this interview and, do such a thorough reading of the book, and your expertise is clear through that, right? I mean, I really thank you for all the feedback and, the connection piece that you talked about. That's so powerful for us, right? I mean, we really wanted, we had this, impossible goal of we have this impossible goal of connecting with all professionals across the globe. And I think the connection and the contribution and the value matters a lot to us. And, that's why we've embarked on this journey, and our subsequent projects are in that alignment. So big thank you. I really appreciate the feedback. And if you or any of the listeners have any suggestions on how this work could be made better, we are very happy to receive them. We are hoping that next year we will release a revised edition of the book as well. So we are open to all critique and all comments and all thoughts.
Yeah. Thank you for the attention, for the questions, for the listeners' attention. And to just repeat, part of that is to that we are on this quest. We'd like to be on this quest together. So we really like to be on this quest with you. So please let us know what your responses are, and we can go further together.
So thank you very much to both of you for your very kind words. I very much appreciate it, and for your time. And I'll just mention again that this book is available on Amazon. And now I'll invite the audience, people who are watching, to stay tuned, because in a moment I will show the website addresses for Dr. KetanKulkarni and for Dr. FrancisYoo. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.